Hello everyone! I'm going to make this video to show you how you can fix a broken button on your PlayStation 4 controller. It's always been a hobby of mine to fix electronics such as gaming controllers, phones, you name it. And so it is my honor to make this video to show you how to repair electronics yourself. So please watch and enjoy. Okay, so this is my home screen here. And as you can tell, I can go down, right? But when I use the D-pad to go down, it doesn't work. It's supposed to go down, but it just doesn't. So I'm gonna take apart this controller and see if I can get it repaired. And I'm gonna show you how I do it. Okay, so when electronic stops working, there's a few different possibilities that could prevent the electronic from working again. Worst case scenario, the motherboard could be fried. The battery could not be good. There could be a disconnection in the circuit for the button press to be registered, called an open circuit. Or it could be something as simple as just dust or debris that's collected underneath the button and the actual circuit it presses down on to be registered as a button press. Those are the only ways I can think of. So since the controller actually turns on, I know the battery is okay, it does its job. Since all the other buttons work okay, I'm going to assume that the motherboard is actually fine. So I guess that leaves two other possibilities. There could be something as simple as just dust and debris collected under here, or there could be an open circuit. So I'm going to show you how the steps to fix those problems. Okay, so what I'm going to do is take apart this controller. On the back, there's 4 different screws here. I'm going to use this miniature Phillips screwdriver. You can find a miniature screwdriver set in just about any department store. I'm going to use something to help pry apart the plastic parts. Something that's non-conductive is best because you don't want to short out a circuit that you don't want to short out in the controller, or else you'll fry something. Over here I got some Q-tips and some rubbing alcohol to clean out any of the dust and debris that I find in there. So the locations of these screws are right here, one right here, one right here, and one right here. After I unscrew those, I should be able to pry apart the controller and actually get inside this thing. Okay, I just removed those screws very easily, and I'm gonna place them on this magnetic tray that I have. This is super handy to have if you work on any electronics, just so you won't lose any screws just rolling around on a table somewhere. So once those 4 screws are removed, you should already feel the controller pieces start separating already. So this is where you need to be extra careful when actually opening it, because this is where sometimes buttons might fall out, like your R2, R1, and just these back buttons right here. But also, see the separator between the row 1 and the row 2 buttons? There's the separator right here. It's connected to this back piece, and that's what we're going to separate. So remember, when you lift it up, it's supposed to be in a up and this way sort of motion, like that. So be extra careful. And okay, I finally got my controller separated, and sure enough, my R2 button came out. It takes a little bit of, some pressure and finicking, but you'll get it. So one thing you will immediately notice is that there's a ribbon cable right here. See that white ribbon cable? Don't pull on that. Make sure it's still intact. So right here, just gotta pull out this part. See that? All I did was just kind of pull out this little tab, and there you go. And what that controls is actually the light bar in your controller there. And once you get that, then this will totally separate, as you can obviously see. Right here, okay. I'm gonna remove my R2 button and make sure I don't lose the spring. That's the other thing. If one of your R2, your row 2 buttons separate, make sure you have a hold of this little spring right here. And all that does is kind of give a response back when you press the row 2 buttons, is it pops back up. It's because of that little spring. Don't damage that and don't lose it. So right when you open the controller, you should see this little gray box right here. That's the battery. All you do is just kind of yank up on the white tab right there, and it just instantly separates, just like that. And there you go. That's your controller battery. And if you ever find your controller constantly dying all the time, that's because this guy needs to be replaced. This depletes over time. I want to say after, what, like a year, your battery isn't very good anymore. And all you do is just buy it from somewhere like eBay, and this is what comes in the mail. All you do is just kind of put it back in and plug it in and put your controller back together, and it should work just like new. The whole key here is actually finding the correct battery. Batteries are extremely complicated. There are a lot of battery manufacturers out there that sell just garbage batteries. So it's always good to do research on your batteries and know like which one is actually good and which will last more. Some of the best batteries are actually made in China, in the Hong Kong area. Anyway, there you go. All right, so here's the little row 2 spring that I almost broke when I was taking this thing apart. You can see that little thing? It's so small. So how that kind of goes into your row 2 button is just right over this little part right here. And then it just kind of stays like that. That's all it does. Okay, so more about that spring. It just kind of fits in this small little slot right here. I don't know if you can see it, but it just fits right there. And this R2 button just kind of slips in there, and then you have your R2 button back, your row 2 buttons. The row 1 buttons are not that big of a deal. They don't use a spring. All they use is just kind of like this rubber pad to just kind of give it the return that it needs. But okay, finally got my R2 button put back in place there. Fair warning, working on these electronics takes a lot of patience. If you don't get it the first time, or get a little frustrated, don't let it discourage you. This is definitely a patience sort of a game. All right, so what I'm going to do now is just take off this big black plastic thing right here in the middle of the controller. All that's really is done is just by pulling this out. There we go. Got it. Of course, be very careful when you do it. Okay. Once that is removed, all you do is take off this tab right here. See that little blue tab right there? That's for your touchpad. Yeah, so be careful removing that. What I'm going to do is just use these tweezers. You can also just do it with your fingers too, whichever works for you. tweezers don't work. So I'm gonna use my fingers. All I'm gonna do is just gently pull off. There we go, boom, there we go. It was actually easier than I thought. So make sure that's disconnected right there. See that? That's disconnected. All right. Now after this, there's the screw right here. Right here. You see that? Loosen this screw. And it should make your motherboard, which is this giant green piece, absolutely loose. Should just come right off after that. In fact, I can feel it just wiggling right there. So this is what we're going to remove to actually see the actual button circuit, what makes these buttons actually work. I should also add that before you remove your motherboard, your joysticks are still connected to it. And so if you have any joystick attachments, so like me, I actually have these bumper attachments to the joystick there, remove those because they're going to go through this little hole when you take off the motherboard. Okay. All I did was just kind of press down on these joysticks and you immediately see the controller separate. You see that? It's just separating right now. And be careful with your options button and your share button because they're loose too. Here we go. I'm just gonna take this off. There we go. Okay, there we go. Okay, so right here, I'm going to pull on this little tab here and notice the actual motherboard and the actual the harness, electrical harness is just right there. See that? There we go. So there's the inside of your buttons right here. And this is your electrical harness. That's the circuits for all your buttons. And all that does is tell your motherboard that it's being pressed. The problem is either this harness or the motherboard. As I discussed earlier, I'm willing to bet that it's the actual harness itself. And I'm going to inspect this one right here because I know for a fact that's the down button. And okay, I don't know if you can see this very well. As I look at it, it actually doesn't look too bad. In fact, it looks pretty clean. The next step is to actually look on the inside of your button right here. This is my bottom button right here. See that? It's this one right here. And so there could be dust and debris that's collected right here. I don't know if it's what's causing it wrong or not. So what I'm going to do is get a Q-tip and clean this part right here. I'm also going to use the Q-tip to clean this part too, this button right here. And while I'm at it, might as well just swab the rest of the button presses. Really. Okay, so what I'm going to do is use a little bit of rubbing alcohol right here. Kind of douse it just a little bit. You don't really need a whole lot, like 2 drops maybe. And I'm just gonna rubbing alcohol on this. Make sure everything is absolutely clean. Get the PlayStation button too. Of course, the X, circle, triangle, and square buttons. Make sure everything's registered for. Okay. Okay. Also, go. Okay, also, all I did is just kind of open up the motherboard like this. And if you can see a little better, see these connectors right here? I know. It's so weird to film like this. Okay. See those little connectors right there? Those are also your button presses too. And so clean those too. This is how the controller actually receives the button presses, right here. Okay. All this harness really is just plastic and some conductive metal. That's all this harness really is. Okay. And can you also, here, the motherboard right here, this thing right here. This is where this circuit makes contact to the motherboard. This is the actual connection to the motherboard for all of your buttons. And while you have this opened up, make sure you look for any debris, any hair, any dust. Just make sure everything looks very clean when you do this. Yeah, get all that hair and debris out of there. This is your joysticks, so there's going to be a lot of dust and just crap just collected right there. So I'm just gonna keep rubbing this, make sure everything's okay. Inspect everything, make sure that everything kind of has its place, nothing looks damaged. And yeah. So after you cleaned the actual harness itself and where it talks to the motherboard, what I'm going to do is assemble this controller back together. And then I'm gonna plug in the battery, turn it on, and actually see if that fixed the problem. And if it doesn't, then worst case scenario, you'll have to go to eBay and buy this plastic electrical harness and replace it, basically. And you can find that, I want to say on eBay. The one that I found was on eBay, and it's $5. That's all this plastic harness really is that has all your buttons and stuff to it. Anyway, I'll leave that link to it in the description below. So I just push the motherboard back into the controller here. And what I'm going to do is actually reconnect the touchpad again. Ugh. It's very small stuff. You gotta be very careful about this. Okay. There's a small tab there too that you gotta flip down and flip up to connect and reconnect it. Be careful on that. As I stressed before, be very careful about this stuff. Don't try to use a whole bunch of pressure to really do something when you're inside the controller. Since these parts are so small, there shouldn't be a lot of force being used. Actually taking apart the controller is basically where you will use the most amount of force. So once I get this back right here, I'm gonna put the screw back. This screw right back in the center of the motherboard here. Right here. That thing. So that just kind of locks the motherboard in place where it should be. And I'm gonna insert this part back. All it does is just clip onto place just like that. Anyway, all it does is just hold the battery in place, and that's all it does. And then I'm gonna plug the battery back to where it was unplugged. Okay. Be very careful. The battery connector right here is actually shaped in a very specific way where you cannot reverse the polarity in there. So that's a little useful. There we go. So right now, I gotta plug this back in. I think this will actually work just fine, just the way this is. Okay, so I was able to turn on my PlayStation with my controller just like this. I'm just holding the battery in place. And as you can see, my D-pad doesn't work at all. But my joystick works fine. So, it looks like it's pretty broken. So what I'm going to do is replace the actual harness. Worst case scenario, that's what I'm going to do. So I have an old controller that I don't really use. So what I'm going to do is swap out the electrical harness, this thing right here, this plastic thing, with the broken one right here. All right, so when you take off a electrical harness, as you can tell, this whole thing is one big piece. It's connected to all the buttons, including your row 1 and row 2 buttons, right under here. So what you're going to do is basically pop off both the row 1 and the row 2 buttons to actually get this whole thing removed. So one thing to remember is that the electrical harness is all just one piece. And that means it talks to your row 1 and row 2 buttons. So what you gotta do is actually pop off the plastic buttons and take off the rubber bouncer beneath them to actually remove the entire electrical harness. So be very careful when you pop these off, the row 2 buttons, because there's that very small spring underneath there. So what I'm gonna do is start with my row 2 button. What's easy about these is that they just pop right out. You just gotta give it a little bit of force and out, and then it just kind of pops open just like that. There we go. There we go. See, it's starting to separate. There we go. Okay, there we have it. I think this is an older controller. It's a little designed a little differently than the one that I'm actually trying to fix. Pretty odd. It even has like this little stem on the bottom of it. Now I'm gonna do it to this side too. I'm gonna just use a little bit of force, just a little bit, and just kind of pop it off like that. Same thing. Just slowly pull that off. There we go. So it'll look like this. See, this is a rubber like bouncer. This is what it presses. With this row 1 button, I'm going to also give it a little bit of force. Up. I go up with it. And it just pops right out, just like that. Just slides out. Again, no spring to it, so, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Just pop it off like that. Yep. There we go. There we go. There you have it. Both the row buttons are popped off, and as you can see, there's just a rubber bouncer, just like your D-pad buttons. I can't really find them right now. They all have like those rubber bouncers right here. All they do is press down on the actual harness with a conductive material, and it just kind of sends the electrical pulse to the motherboard that a button is being pressed. So what I'm going to do is actually take off the rubber bouncer, just like that. And there's this one too. They're taken off the same way. You just kind of pull up and remove it. Yeah. Okay, now when you get to this part, I think it's good to actually use like a little tool to actually get underneath the harness there. And all it does is just kind of pull out. Lift it up on both sides, right? It's supposed to go up and over this column right here. I'm not exactly sure why this is here. I think this is for your row 1 button to be pressed up and down. So all you do is just kind of fold up and over it, just like that. Okay. Okay. What I'm gonna do is actually take off this part right here. Here we go. See that? Just lifts off like this. See that? Just comes right off. Okay. Again, be gentle with this if you ever have to do it. Don't want to cause a disconnection somewhere. There we go. There we go. Okay, just like that. It's almost off. So on the motherboard side, right here, this motherboard side, you also got to disconnect it here, like so. That's what's kind of keeping it in place. Here we go. There we go. So that's disconnected right here. And all that does is it's going to pull through this little window right there. Here we go. Again, be very careful as much as possible. There we go. There's the electrical harness. When you buy this off of eBay or somewhere, wherever you get it, it'll just come like this. And what I'm going to do now is basically do the same thing on this broken controller, replace this in here, and see if it works. All right, so taking out the harness for my broken controller, this one, and my old controller, I noticed that they're completely different. They're shaped differently, and they're colored differently too. This. And another thing I noticed is these harnesses have a number on them. My old controller has 1335, and this one has a 6A on there. Those are the numbers that I need to look up when ordering parts to be sure that my part is actually the correct part. So when you're ordering these parts, pay attention to those numbers so you aren't ordering the wrong one. So I placed my broken electrical harness in this controller, and my D-pad now works again. But the down button still doesn't work, even after just cleaning it. So anyway, so what I'm going to do is do the waiting game. I'm going to wait for my electrical harness to come in the mail, and it'll look something like this. This is another electrical harness for another PlayStation controller I was working on. And notice that those numbers right there, different numbers. Looks like it's 1656. So, yeah, and there's this number too. It's 1546. So just know that there's a lot of different harnesses out there. And to identify them, look up these numbers. All right. Welcome back. This is part 2 of my fixing a PlayStation 4 controller video. My part just arrived in the mail. My electrical harness. Now, one thing I noticed is it doesn't have the exact numbers that I looked for with my broken electrical harness. They have two completely different numbers. I have no idea why. When I ordered this part, it actually had the numbers on the actual description of the ad, and so that's what made me order it. And when I got it, it's different numbers. But the part looks identical. I think it's the same as the one that I'm looking for. So I hope this is the right one. And what I'm gonna do is replace it in this controller and see if my down button works. That's it. I'm going to show you how exactly I'm gonna do that all over again. I'm gonna take this controller apart and show you how I do it. All right. So these are the tools that I'm gonna use. Just a mini screwdriver set, some Q-tips, rubbing alcohol. Really the only screwdriver that I'm going to need is this 1.2 Phillips right here. That's the one that I'm basically going to use this entire time. Okay, so here I am. I'm going to get started. First, I'm going to take out this screw. Set that right there. This screw. This screw. This is actually the most difficult part when opening it. Kind of get it loose right here. Okay. What I do is I'm just gonna up and over the damn thing. Okay, just get it loose. There we go. There we go. Okay. There we go. Okay. Okay, this time I didn't lose my row 2 buttons. When you do that, that's actually a success. So here I go. I'm going to first disconnect this battery right here, the very first thing. Make sure it doesn't receive any power so I don't short any circuits accidentally. So there's the battery. Just gonna set that right there. Secondly, I'm going to remove this white cable right here. I just pull on this blue tab right here. Then it just separates. See, there's that little blue tab right here. I just pulled it out with my fingers. Next thing, I'm going to take off this back plate. Be gentle about it. You don't really need a whole lot of force, but just need to use enough to pull it off, but not break it. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is pull this little tab right here, this blue one. First I have to pull down on this little flap door to make it loose and then pull it out. There we go. It just almost falls out after that. Okay. Now I'm going to see this screw right here? There's a screw right in the middle of this motherboard that keeps it in place. Going to unscrew that. There you go, just kind of set that right here. Okay, what I'm gonna do is pull this off right here. Oh, okay, should just fall out just about. Oh, first I should actually remove my joystick attachments that I got here, protecting them, just to make sure they fit through the hole when I pull out the motherboard. And there we go. See, it just basically just comes right out. Okay, now be careful on this part, because this is when your options and share button is still loose too. So don't want them to fall out. Just kind of keep everything together as much as possible. There we go. There we go. See that? Got everything here, right here. And there's the electrical harness, this broken one. I'm gonna replace with this new one. That's it. Right? To do that, I gotta yank off these buttons anyway, and shouldn't take too long. Okay, what I'm gonna do is just okay, there we go. Just pull that off. I'm not gonna lose that little spring right there. See that little spring? Don't lose that. Okay. Okay. Same thing to the other side. Okay, there we go. See? Come on. Oh, whoop. Almost lost it. Got it. Okay. Now these I just pull up and it just comes right out. I'm gonna remove the little gummies right here. Okay, there we go. And see this, it almost basically falls out. Okay. Side is gonna need a little bit more force. There we go. Basically just came out right there. Okay. Even though this is broken, I'm still going to be gentle, just because that's good practice. Just stay gentle about it. Okay. Gotta fit this over. Okay. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is pull off two little tabs holding this together on the inside of this thing. Okay. Okay. There we go. There's the broken harness right there. Just gonna set that aside. And here's the new one, the brand new one that I hope will fix this problem. I think it's good practice to actually still clean it while you're you have it right here in front of you. It's just so you don't have to do it later. If there's any excessive dirt that you kind of like put back, when you put this thing back, you don't have to take it apart again. That'd be bad. Just make sure everything's clean, clean as possible. Okay. Do the same thing to the board too. The exact same thing. I know it makes contact with the board right here, so I'm just gonna swab that a little bit with some rubbing alcohol. Make sure everything looks clean. Everything looks like it has its place. Doesn't really take that long. Okay. Now with this, what I'm going to do is fit it through the controller here. It's the first step I'm going to take. Basically just the same steps I did taking it apart, but now in reverse. Okay. Since this is a brand new part, it doesn't fold very well. See how this is kind of folded? Because it's naturally like that. Well, this new part, it's gonna have some problems with just being flat. So just be gentle when you put it back. Try not to use a whole lot of force. Make sure everything kind of fits correctly. And also notice this has the basic shape as my replacement part. It should be like that. Make sure you observe your new part and compare it with your old part, and it should be exactly alike. Unfortunately, my numbers don't match on the parts. Hopefully that isn't an issue. But besides that, everything's the same. Okay. So what I do with this part right up here, I just kind of take this part and I insert it underneath. There's like a slot right here. And then I just kind of slide it underneath there. You don't kind of go up and over anything. You slide it underneath it in that slot, if that's helpful. Okay. Okay. As I said, this is gonna be a little stubborn because it's a flat part and it's supposed to bend, so it's gonna be a little misshaped like this, but that's normal. Okay. Also make sure that you have the part facing the correct side. How I think a way to really describe this is the green or the colored part should face towards you, face away from the controller. The green or the blue part, I don't know what color your part is, but make sure the color is facing you when you put it on the controller. If you do it the opposite direction, this is the wrong side. If you do it the opposite direction, no buttons will work at all. So make sure that's on the right side too. Okay, now I'm going to put the gummies back, your row gummies. I don't know the technical term for them. Okay. Okay. There we go. Make sure that's kind of in a good spot. Okay. There we go. Okay. Make sure everything looks aligned with your gummy. Like when you put it back, make sure that the actual buttons, the pads that go down, they actually look like they're in the right place on the wiring harness. Make sure everything's aligned correctly. Okay. The gummy, I just kind of insert them, and then I have to kind of push down on kind of like the row 1 button, and then it fits flat after that. Okay. Here we go. All right. Now I'm going to put my row buttons back. Here we go. Here we go. Hold on. There we go. Make sure they're the right ones too. The R1 goes in the R1 spot. Yeah. Don't want to get those mixed up. Hold on, I'm just gonna make sure I got everything right. Ah. See, I was trying to fit it on the wrong spot. Okay, there you go. Make sure the R1 is facing you. Same thing with the L1. Make sure everything is right. There you go. Cool. That feels right. All right, here comes the challenging part. That's the actual row 2 buttons, because there's a spring right here. Oh, geez. Okay. You know, just because I think it's a little bit easier, I'm going to actually... I'm going to put this back onto this big piece right here. The reason why I'm going to do this is just because I can screw the motherboard back to its place, and so I won't have to fumble around with the motherboard a lot because it's loose. So after I fit it in place like that, make sure you still have that blue tab right here. Make sure that's there before you screw anything. Going to get the screw right here and basically screw that into place right here. Here we go. So now it's just in one piece. I'm not really fumbling around with the motherboard very much. Okay, so this takes a lot of practice, but once you get the hang of it, it's not so bad. Make sure you use the correct side. Sometimes I insert the spring first, sometimes I fit the spring in the slot and then fit the button on. It's whatever you're comfortable with. Okay. Here we go. Okay. There we go. So that time I insert the spring on the button first, and then I fit it into place. I mean, it's tricky, for sure. Like I said, it just takes some practice, but be sure it has a good response. And it should be just as good as new, really. but it does take a lot of practice. I still make a lot of mistakes when I put this row 2 button back. Okay. There we go. Okay. I think this is back into place. Okay. After that, what I'm gonna do is, okay, I mean, that's kind of the hard part. I mean, everything else is kind of going back, reversing your steps. From here, I'm going to reconnect the blue cable on the top right here. I know this is a terrible filming job. My bad. As good as I can do at the moment. So I fit the blue tab back, and there's like a little door that you gotta flip back up into place. Yeah, okay. So when I fit it in, I just kind of flip this teeny little door, and then it just kind of locks it in place. Now from here, I'm gonna slip this piece on. It's just a clip. Once you fit it in the holes, you just kind of push down and then it clips into place. I'm just gonna attach my joystick attachments right here. Maybe. Oh geez, there goes my R2 button. Yeah, my R2 button doesn't really fit in place very well. I think there's actually a broken piece with it, so it doesn't really lock into place as well as the L2 button. But when I put the controller back together, it should hold the R2 button in place just fine. Yeah, see it. Yeah, there's a broken part right there. Try to be gentle about this. Nothing about this is really easy. I mean, all this takes a lot of patience. If you ever need to take a break, definitely do that. You know, this is a patience game. Okay. Okay, I think this is back in place, okay? Yeah. Still loose, but it'll work. Okay, with this, I'm going to put the battery back. Yeah, like this. And then it clips right into here. There we go. Okay. Now, I'm going to put this cable back in this white slot right here. Thankfully, it's kind of long. I'm just gonna push it in. That's it. There's no door or any lock in there. You just kind of slide it in. And now with fitting this, you gotta fit it over your row 2 buttons first. That's how I kind of like to do it. There we go. So just like that. And then after that, you just kind of close the controller back on the bottom first. There, and then it locks into place. So it feels right. It feels correct. Make sure everything looks aligned. No joysticks are facing opposite directions and all that. Okay. Here we go. Okay. Here comes the easy part. All you do is just screw in the final screws. That's it. Screw them back into here. So I looked online, and buying a new PlayStation 4 controller is roughly $50 to $60, brand new. By doing this, I saved about, I want to say, $40 to $50. The part itself was $5, and shipping itself was also $5. So that's how much you can save when you fix your own controllers. Okay. Didn't quite close that, right? There we go. Oops, I think I used the wrong screw. No, it fits. Okay. All right. Let's see if it works. So I just put my controller back together, and now it works. My D-pad is fine. Here we go. See that? I can move left and right, down and up, no problem. Just like that. Sweet. It's fixed. Woo! So I'm happy it's fixed. I hope that you learned something from this video. And if I get 5,000 likes for this video, I'll show you how to repair iPhones. That's right, I can show you how to replace batteries in your iPhone as well as screens for your iPhone. If you drop your phone and it shatters it, I can easily show you how to replace that screen, and as well as swapping out the battery. After, I want to say, about a year, batteries go bad, and so that means the battery in your phone doesn't last very long. I can show you how to replace those. And over Christmas, I actually replaced the batteries in all of my family's phones. And each battery, I want to say, cost me about $10, $15. Everything else is just labor. So it's a great skill to have, and I can show you how to do that. And I'd be happy to. Just let's get 5,000 likes. Why not? There's the goal, 5,000. And I don't know, get better equipment to film myself when I do this, so I can show you how I'm doing it, because I understand this really isn't the best equipment. I honestly didn't want to make this video very long, but obviously that didn't happen. Anyway, thanks, and hope I helped you.